Here's a book that kept me very, very entertained. It's Cold, Cold Ground by a man named Adrian McKinty. I think it's definitely worth checking out. Adrian McKinty is a writer from Northern Ireland. This book of his, Cold, Cold Ground, is a crime/police story. It's set in 1981. The story takes place in a small town called Carrickfergus, and also a little bit in the city of Belfast. Now, you may recall that 1981 was the height of what the Irish called the Troubles. Along with bombings and stuff like that, it also featured the hunger strikes at that prison that climaxed with the death of Bobby Sands. Now for the story. First, let me describe the crimes. There are 3 murders. One is a guy found in an abandoned car with a severed hand. The second, in his lap. The second is another guy with a severed hand. And the key thing is that the severed hands have been switched. Now, the third death is a girl's apparent suicide. And of course, the apparent suicide is actually a murder. So those are the crimes that are at the heart of the story. Now for the cop. His name is Sean Duffy, and he's a pretty complex character. He's single. He's a rookie in terms of being a homicide detective. He likes drinking, he likes music, but most importantly for the story is he's a Catholic in the mostly Protestant Royal Ulster Constabulary. And you would think that that would make him about as welcome as a mosquito in a nudist camp, but he seems to get along pretty well with most of the other cops in the precinct. So the book is how this cop, Sean Duffy, solves these crimes. Now, when I was reading the book, there were 3 writers who came to my mind, and the first of these was Stuart Neville. Now, Stuart Neville is another Irish writer who also sets his novels in Northern Ireland, and he also has a Catholic cop who's part of the RUC, the constabulary. The second writer was Philip Kerr. His novels featured a cop named Bernie Gunther, who was a Berlin detective during the Nazi period. And the third one that I thought of was Martin Cruz-Smith, whose main character was Arkady Renko, the Russian cop. I think what they all have in common is the idea of a sort of a misfit cop honestly trying to solve regular crimes in an incredibly hostile environment. Now, you talk about hostile environments. The one Sean Duffy is dealing with has lots of IRA and paramilitary activity. It's got drug trafficking and government corruption. You really get into the absolutely miserable reality of life in Northern Ireland during the time of the Troubles. We're talking about paranoia, fear, tension, just all the time. Along with, I'd have to say, a generous helping of hopelessness and frustration. I've got to say that the writing in this book is top-notch. First off, McKinty creates a great sense of atmosphere and tension, and that really pulls you into the story. The other thing that he does is he keeps the plot moving. It's a sort of a fast-paced crime story. So anyway, Adrian McKinty, I'm going to read more of his books, I'm sure. He's got a bunch more. But in the meantime, I bring this one to your attention. I recommend it. Why don't you give it a try? And I'll tell you what, I'll see you next week.